Hello, I'm Lucas Kitchen. Thanks for joining us. This is More to the Story. It's a look at what's going on in the world from a Christian perspective. Now, you might want to subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're on, and I want to remind you we have a podcast version, so you could be listening to this on your way home from the office, if you still go to the office or whatever, wherever you want. So today we're going to talk about this question: why is media in the United States more negative than other places in the world? Now, you may be saying, now, hold up a minute. How do we know that U.S. media is more negative? Well, there has been a recent study published by a guy named Bruce Sacerdote. He's a Dartmouth College professor. Now, in his study, what he did was he analyzed thousands of news stories. He built a database and he created a method for determining whether a story was negative or positive. And this was based on the language that it was used. He used sort of a search engine type system that would catalog these stories. And he cataloged thousands from the United States, but also international outlets. Now, one of the divisions he made was between national media stories and local regional media stories. And the other important thing that we need to know about this study was that it was done at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you would expect it to be negative, right? I mean, that was the nature of the world that we were living in. And here's what he found. He found that 87% of U.S. national news stories were negative. 87%, that's nearly 90%. What does that leave? 13% were positive during that period. Now, it's probably a little bit different right now because we're not really in the pandemic as we were then, of course, and things did seem really negative. So this doesn't maybe come as a huge surprise until you contrast it with the international scene for news. So here's what he found, which I think probably surprises a lot of people, that only 51% of news stories from other countries, national news stories from other countries, 51% were negative. Now that's about what you'd expect, right? 50% negative, 50% positive. That seems pretty fair. Now they're 51%, but pretty close to a half and half split. Now compare that against the negativity of the American national news, which is nearly 90% negative. Now what's another little interesting data point here is that he also looked at American local and regional news, and it wasn't nearly as negative as the national news. The local and regional news, he pegged it at about 53% were negative stories. So that's close to a 50-50 split. And so there's something about American national news that leans incredibly negative when it reports on various stories. So why is this? Why is American national news so negative? Well, it seems like it's because fear drives traffic, right? So all of the news stations now are basically website based. I mean, they may have a cable channel, they may have, other ways, radio or whatever, but they want to drive traffic not only to their shows, but to their websites. And that is because there is more opportunity to sell ads to viewers, and have more viewers on that website. They want eyes and ears. And the reason why they can do that with negative stories is because of what I would call danger aversion. Let's just say you have the opportunity to look at a human interest story, something with cute kittens, right? But then you also have the opportunity to look at a story about an incoming hurricane, which is going to scrape your city very soon. Well, which are you likely to look at first? Well, you're more likely to look at the hurricane story because it has danger in it, and we are designed to avoid danger. We want that danger avoidance. Now, why does that matter in terms of media? Well, it's because American media is incredibly competitive. It is incredibly competitive. There are so many media outlets, and they are all competing for your eyes and ears. And that's important to understand when you consider how media gets slanted and how it gets skewed. So, the thing to know about the media is that you are not the customer of a media outlet. You're not the customer. You are the product. And you say, oh, come on, what are you even talking about? Well, think about this for a second. The vast majority of media is paid for by advertisers. Even those subscription-based models where you pay something to watch, now that's the case with, like, say, cable news channels, but also some of these smaller subscription-based news, they usually still have ads. And the ads are what pays for the lion's share of that production. Okay, so if there are advertisers, that makes you not the customer, it makes you the product. Now, how is that? It's because that media outlet is then going to take your eyes and ears and sell it to its advertisers. That's how the model works. Now, the nice thing about this is that none of the media outlets are hiding this. We know this is the case. They're upfront about it. So they're not lying. They're not deceptive about that part of the model. It's just that we need to know how that affects our stories and the things that we look at. And because the U.S. media is so competitive, it therefore has to use tactics that make you more likely to look at their story than another person's story. So, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you pull up multiple media websites and look at the way that each of those media outlets reports the same story, it's pretty startling. You can tell which way they lean by how they write their headlines. And all of them, whether conservative or liberal or moderate, they all lean different ways politically, but they all do this one thing. They all have this in common. In the United States, if it's a national news outlet, they go negative. They look for the negative angle. Now, I don't know if they're doing this on purpose, but now we have studies to show that that is what's happening. Now, what's the effect? Because this is what really matters to us, especially as Christians. How does it affect us? What difference does it make in our daily lives? Well, the outcome is that it makes people more depressed. It makes people more aggressive, and it makes them more negative. Your outlook of the world matters. That's because the key to your Christian life has to do with your what? What is it? It's your mindset. And your mindset affects everything in your life. And if you are drinking negativity constantly, then that's the way that you're going to see the world. And so there is a cost of skewing the public's worldview toward the bleak, toward the depressing. People then ultimately do more drastic things when they feel desperate. And so if all of the news is negative, negative, negative all the time, then guess what you get? You get division, you get anger, you get rancor, you even get riots, you get dangerous situations because of that incredible negativity. So it's a dangerous game to skew so negative all the time. Are they winning? Well, they're winning and getting your eyes and ears, but we're all losing when news is so negative, when especially it doesn't need to be. Now, you can find more on this study by just Googling the name that I mentioned, which is Bruce Sacerdote. He's been reported, this study's been reported on the New York Times. It was on an episode of Freakonomics recently, and lots of folks are drawing meaning from what he has to say. But I want to take it in a different direction. I want us to remember where our minds are supposed to be and how we are supposed to operate as Christians. This is where we diverge from the national narrative. Notice what Paul said in Galatians. He said, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering," sometimes called patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law, and those who are Christ's have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. So if the news that you watch is making it difficult for you to live in these fruits of the Spirit, then I would say start looking for a different news source, or stop looking at the news altogether, or find some solution. But our goal as believers is to live in the Spirit and experience these fruits of the Spirit. I hope that you'll lean into that today and you'll work on trying to figure out how to get that negativity out of your life. Thanks for watching.